Welcome to Eden's Early Years Insight. I'm with me, Kathy Leatherbarrow, and today I've got Lauren from Banana Moon at Rothwell. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And today we're going to talk about a subject that lots of the sector are talking about at the moment, and it's reaching the media and the national press as well, which is school readiness. It's a big topic, isn't it, really?
It is a big topic, controversial topic.
Yes, and there's lots of debates going on at the moment on whether it is a setting and schools job to do a lot of these tasks and learning and development with children, or actually it sits with parents as the parents and the caregiver of the child to nurture and develop these basic, learning milestones for children in order to be school ready.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to talk about what is school ready first, don't you, Lauren?
Exactly.
As in, it's not when a big proportion of people think it is, as in, most parents and caregivers really and families would think that's when they start school, that's when they go off to reception.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not,
No.
is it? That our curriculum, our EYFS, runs right into the end of reception, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Those are endpoint assessments for children at the point that they reach compulsory school age. So their children reaching, the term after they turn 5.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to expect that children achieve those things at such a young age, but why kind of place that responsibility on them, as so to speak, at such a young age when it isn't what is neurotypically deemed, appropriate for a child of their age?
Yeah, I also worry that it's going to, there's going to be a bigger divide to create an inclusive learning and milestones for children as well.
Yeah.
Because some children will not naturally reach these milestones, and endpoint assessments, and by putting a lot of emphasis on children being school ready with a lot of tick charts that I've seen, passed around the internet, that it's it's going to create that divide bigger for some children.
I think there's a couple of things kind of on this topic that are really, really big bugbears for me. The first one being about that kind of inclusive practice aspect. And I think inclusive and inclusion is so misconstrued to mean that inclusion is providing children with the same opportunities, and that's not true. Inclusion is providing children access to the same opportunities. It's removing barriers to learning so that children have access to equal opportunity. If you have a child in a wheelchair, you're not going to be able to provide exactly the same opportunity in the same way as you would for a child who was able-bodied. It's removing the barriers to enable them to engage in the same experiences that you would provide for other children.
And going off that example, that doesn't make their physical development any less.
Exactly.
Probably greater.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd just be very different, won't it, for them?
Definitely, absolutely. And it's acknowledging a unique child, an individual child, and how they learn the support that they need to be able to do that. The same with that term, school readiness. That term, that generalised term, I feel that the skills and the knowledge that we're preparing children with is preparing them for life. We're not preparing children just for school. We're preparing them to be well-rounded, confident, resilient young people.
Yeah.
And their skills that they're going to need to navigate life through school and beyond into further education and employment.
And that's why we've given the importance to these prime areas of learning, particularly, as being the fundamental stepping stones to their future learning, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is, definitely. And I agree with, what you alluded to previously in terms of school readiness. I think it takes away any responsibility that a school then has to get to know a child. If we're saying as settings we need to prepare children with the knowledge and skills to go to school, they need to be toilet trained by this age, they need to be able to sit, write their name, whatever it may be that we're ticking off on these tick lists that, that you say are kind of circulating the sector at the moment, if we're making sure children are achieving those milestones and we're sending them off to school and saying, oh, but they can toilet independently and they can write their name, schools aren't getting to know children because they've taken any ownership away from them. Forging those partnerships with your local schools, the schools that you feed children into most frequently, is really, really vital. Invite them in to meet the children before they transition. Discuss information about the children, what makes them tick, their likes, their dislikes, any family history, any safeguarding issues that it's really imperative the school knows. It's really, really vital that they know those children and how they learn.
That's, fundamental, isn't it, that transition? And, parents and caregivers need to be a part of that as well, don't they? It's that holistic approach to caring for a child, educating a child and getting the best out of them, isn't it, for their learning journey further into the education system.
It is, yeah, absolutely. At Banana Moon, there's lots of different things that we kind of have embedded to support a child through their journey to school. And we discuss kind of expectations of school and a transition to school with parents. We do workshops so parents can attend and we can talk about a little bit about what that looks like. And for parents who haven't ever had a child transition to school, it can be quite unnerving, them not knowing kind of what to expect. So we'll talk to parents about what to expect, what they need to prepare. We don't just go through, can your child toilet independently? Can your child write their name? We're talking about, do you know what to pack for their first day? Do you know what books you can purchase or borrow from nursery? Because we're in a cost of living crisis. Not everybody has the luxury of being able to go out and purchase these books. Do you know where you can access this information? Do you know what time they're starting school on their first day?
And it's things like, as you say, we're in a cost of living crisis, but, support for families who may be entitled to things like free school meals for their children and, different, benefits that the school might provide if they are, a child that needs that support as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot to take on, isn't it? 'Cause
It is.
I recall when my children started school, the collective thought was, you get so much information from nursery when they were there, and you get nothing from school. And it's not that they get nothing, but the quantity of it is very different, isn't it? And
it is massively different.
And that's something that parents need to be aware of as well, isn't it? That, it's not, even the reception age, getting, where they're preparing for that, for their formal education in year one, it's a big step.
It is a big step.
For children and for families as well to get used to. And it's for them to get used to during that year as well as the child, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's almost our role to ensure parents are equipped with the knowledge to be able to handle that transition as effectively as possible. But school also needs to be responsible for reaching out and ensuring parents have welcome packs and are informed throughout that transition period. I was amazed at how many schools we'd reached out to during our last transition year and who said they weren't conducting visits to nursery to get to know children beforehand. They were just waiting for children to come into them, and children don't behave the same way in a school environment that they don't know as they would if you saw them in a place they were comfortable, like nursery.
Or even home.
Yeah. And I suppose the benefit to nursery being that you're seeing them around other children.
Yeah.
It's a more school-like atmosphere, if you like. And you can see kind of how they interact with other children, who they are as little people, because it's really important. They're all different. And I think, it's really, really imperative that they take the time to get to know each and every one of them rather than just taking what an adult says.
Do you find that schools want much information from you on what they can do and what they can't do?
So when I did my early years teacher training, that was one of the questions that I asked the class teacher in reception. Something I was really, really interested about. And the reason I asked the question was because there was a little girl who had some additional needs, and the information that they'd been given from a previous setting was so limited that they were finding it really difficult to get to grips with kind of knowing her, what makes her, like what her likes are, her dislikes, her sensory profile, because she had some sensory needs. So it was really hard for them to kind of have to learn who she was, and they've not been able to do any forward planning in terms of increasing that staff to child ratio and creating a plan for some interventions for her, which she did so desperately need. So when I spoke to her, the general advice was, as much information as you can give, but if you send reams and reams of paperwork and reports, they don't get read. So at Banana Moon, we have a really, really kind of good balance of the information that we share with schools. So we do a passport to school, which I like the terminology of, because passports are
you're going somewhere fun with a passport,
and a passport, it's exciting and it's engaging for the child. The child's involved in that process. So we ask them to draw a picture, absolutely anything that they want to create. And I think a picture literally says 1,000 words in this context. You can determine so much from a child's drawing in terms of their focus and attention, their fine motor skills. We write on the top what the child said they've created. So you can tell so much about their communication skills, their imagination. There's so many different things you can grasp from how a child draws a picture and what they've said they've created. And then on there, we write any key information that we think it might be beneficial for the teachers to know. So that may be anything they're particularly passionate about, anything that they struggle with, that they need more adult support with, if there's any kind of safeguarding concerns, we can make a note on there to speak to the designated safeguarding lead of the nursery, which is myself, so that they can gather any information that they need from that point. Any family background, history that it may be really important for them to know, languages that they speak, anything about their cultural capital, that it's important for them to know, to make sure they know that unique individual child.
So how do you find that the role of the parent or the caregiver sits in this school readiness? Because there's many a debate at the moment about you can't expect schools to take on, because I know there's a big teeth brushing initiative at the moment. So they're using that and saying, parents cannot expect schools to brush the teeth for them, potty train them, and do all this. Where I know the percentages are going higher, but that could be a number of factors, couldn't it? But where do you think parents' role is in this? And how do you encourage it?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for parents to acknowledge is that if you've got a child attending 1, 2, even 3 days a week, the majority of their time is spent at home. And as a result of that, any hard work, time, effort we put into things like toilet training, behaviour support, if children displaying challenging behaviour, anything at all like that, if parents aren't continuing with what we're doing at nursery, learning's not going to be consolidated and children aren't going to achieve their full potential. So it's really important that things like parents' evenings are conducted regularly. Observations are shared with parents. You're discussing, in our observations, we always include a statement at the end that explains how parents can continue to support learning at home. Anything that you can do throughout the day to link, if you're putting diary entries on with little activities that you're doing, anything at all you can do to link that to your curriculum in a way that parents understand, that's jargon free, is great, so that they know kind of what's expected of them and how they can support their children to take next steps in learning.
They need, I think most parents, myself included, with, an array of early years qualifications and experiences, you still want that bit of guidance, don't you, on your child, and that you're doing an okay job. It could be better if you just did this, or if you thought about another method or a way. It's partnership, isn't it, that's rooted in this.
It is, and I think it's so easy to get bogged down as a parent with different opinions of different parents, because ultimately, whether you decide baby-led weaning as an example. Controversial topic. Some people love it, some people hate it. If you read things on the internet, you'll find things for it, you'll find things against it. But what we do and the advice we give is based on research, it's based on science, it's based on years and years of people conducting experiments to find out how children learn, what the most effective behaviour support strategies are, how children build attachments, all those kinds of things. So how communication's developed, how to scaffold a child's learning. We provide advice and support based on research that we've learned. It's scientific in terms of how to support a child.
It's not just your opinion at the time.
No, exactly. So although my opinion on school readiness is that we're taking away responsibility from schools to get to know the children, it's based on scientific research that we provide advice to parents on how to consolidate learning and participate effectively
and guide
in that
them,
transition.
and guide them through parenting their children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because ultimately they're their children, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. Always.
So if you've got children that don't tick all these pegs, in their passport, ready to start school, and their needs are a bit different, their learning's a bit different, how do you support them with their transition?
So it's about meeting a child where they're at. So whatever it is that you use to monitor learning and development, that needs to be shared with the school. Get parents involved. Transitions shouldn't be happening without parents, especially a child who has got additional needs. Parents need to feel involved, have multi-agency meetings, have the school in, have the parents in, invite any professionals that are involved with the support of that child. Have a conversation about where their child is now and where they see them being, so everybody knows what it is they're working towards.
They need to feel empowered, don't they?
They do, absolutely. And it can be hard, especially, some parents are more accepting of the fact that their child isn't developing neurotypically. For some parents, it can be a really, really difficult thing for them to accept. Yeah. It was a huge thing that made me immensely passionate about supporting children with additional needs. During my studies, I read a poem called Welcome to Holland.
Oh, yeah.
And have you read it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a poem which is... It uses a metaphor of a parent going on a visit, and they think they're going to Italy, and they're playing this beautiful place, like canals, riding gondolas, and then the plane has to divert and it lands in Holland instead. And it likens a family having a child with additional needs, which is Holland, instead of a child who was born neurotypical, which would have been that holiday they had in Italy. And if you spend so long dwelling on what you missed in Italy, you won't celebrate the joy that you have in Holland. Yeah. And I think that is very true when it comes to children with additional needs. If you spend a long time thinking about what could have been, what could have happened, if you had a neurotypically developing child, you miss out on all of the joy and the happiness that they bring you now.
And their path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is just as, if not more, rewarding when they make achievements.
More bright and colourful.
It is, absolutely, definitely. So yeah, it's hugely important that passion when you're supporting children with additional needs.
Do you find that there's the support there for those children in schools? Because it's really tough for them at the moment, isn't it?
I think specialist provision's really hard, underfunded, and it's limited. Yep. We are blessed. We have a primary school local to us that is wonderful, and the provision that they have there is wonderful for children with additional needs, and we have a fantastic partnership with them. As the SENCO, I accompany the children with SEND on their visits. So if they go when parents aren't going, I go down to the primary school as a familiar face, and that enables me to role model some strategies to the teachers that work for us in the setting. They've also then got a secure base from which to explore the environment around them, because these children, for some children, especially children with autism, for example, routine and predictability is really important for them. And if they are suddenly plunged into a completely new routine without anybody that's familiar for them, it can be really, really difficult for them to regulate. So having somebody there to support them who knows them well is really important.
They need that comfort base, like you said, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. They do.
So they're saying children's learning and development is, it's the percentage of children being school ready is declining.
Yep.
Do you find that?
I find that generally the feedback that we get from primary schools is really positive. So when parents get in touch with us for show rounds, when we speak to teachers, they always say we love getting the children from Banana Moon because they're such resilient, independent, well-rounded little learners, which is a huge, huge compliment to myself and the team. We're really proud of that. I think that it can be perceptive what you deem as school ready. What one person places importance on isn't necessarily the same as another. So if you spoke to one teacher, they would far rather a child be resilient, independent, whereas another might focus more on how well they're able to control their emotion. Can they sit on a carpet for a 40-minute phonics lesson at 5 years old? So
which is
crazy. Crazy.
Which is a big task for any 5-year-old, isn't it?
It is. I'm going to tell you a story now that really, really, it cemented that I will forever be work in early years and never in a primary school. As part of my early years teacher training, I had to do a placement in a primary school. And I actually went back to the primary school that I attended as a child, which was strange. Lots of teachers there still that were there when I was there. And when I was there, they were learning about the rainforest and they were doing parrots. And laid out on this table was all these materials, and they were having the children draw around their hand, cut out their hand shape, stick it on this parrot shape, use 3 colours of paint to paint these parrots, stick one eye on. And it was so boring. And the children started talking about these super scary spider snakes. So I linked it to the same curriculum themes we talked about, where they'd live, their habitats, what they'd eat, what the weather might be like. And the teacher came over and she put a hand on my shoulder and she said, "Can we just bring it back to the parrots?" And the children had started creating these super scary spider snakes and they were so excited. And the teacher had come over, and within a matter of seconds, you could just visibly see these children deflate. And then they were all sat back around this table making these uniformed parrots. Just think, we're removing so much imagination and curiosity from children. I mean, some of these children weren't at compulsory school age. They were not even 5 years old yet. So to see that was hard. It was a challenge. And that's why I love early years. I love the imagination that we can foster with the children, and that's why we send these children off to school into life resilient, independent and prepared, because they've been able to just go wild. They've got in our art room, they've got paint, pens, glue, scissors. It's out for them to access all the time. They've chopped their T-shirts up before. It happens. We used to have a little boy that twisted his T-shirt in the middle and he used to cut it and he had a great big gaping hole in the middle. Well, he wore that T-shirt to nursery until he stopped cutting it. So, yeah, they go to school resilient, independent, with the knowledge and skills to use those things safely.
And those children would have got so much more learning.
Yeah.
From you following their lead.
Because they will have enjoyed it, every bit of it.
And they were interested in
it.
it.
And empowered. Back to that empowerment.
Absolutely.
Like, they were involved in control of their learning. In early years, we're taught all the time, follow the child's lead, take the child's lead.
And you're there to navigate it, aren't you? And support it. And
scaffold it.
And extend it.
Yeah.
Not squash it.
No, and it was squashed in an instant. And at that moment, I knew school would never be for me. Early years all the way.
For you.
Absolutely.
So do you think that comes into a little bit of being school readiness in terms of following instruction?
I think it's that expectation, isn't it? Yeah. So after my placement, it opened my eyes substantially to the fact that we need to start embedding some expectation of focus and attention during the day. I'm not saying sit the children down for 45 minutes and expect them to listen, because that's not reasonable. What I'm saying is, if we're doing phonics games based on like phase 1 letters and sounds, rhythm and rhyme kind of games, silly soup where you've got words that begin with the same sounds, or our children love a game called Cobbler Cobbler Where's My Shoe, and they all throw the shoes into the middle and they sing the rhyme, and they have to pick 2 random shoes and put them on as fast as they can. It's great for building their focus and attention.
Absolutely.
They're having fun, and they're also learning to tie their own shoes, put their own shoes on, which is a great skill for them to learn.
Not putting on something super easy and they're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. So
or even just concentrating on a puzzle or a jigsaw.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a sustained amount of time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
and
creating
story
that
times
focus, isn't it?
during the day, like making those things engaging. There's nothing worse as a manager when you walk in and you see somebody sat just reading from a book. You don't just need to read from the pages. Adopt that like dialogic reading approach. Use props, sing, embody different characters, use voices.
There's nothing coming from that, is there? They're not even building up on new vocabulary, are they? Because it's not engaging.
No, absolutely not. But the more you engage children with things like that, the more they build their focus and attention and their want to engage, the more prepared they're going to be for what is to come when they make their transitions.
And the more that they want to find out then, and they want to learn, don't they? And they want to get involved with, with what's going on and see where it goes.
Yeah, the children in our preschool room can tell you what an author is, what an illustrator is, what a blurb is, what we find out from a blurb. They're phenomenal, and it's all because the time's been taken to go through those
and embed
things.
that love of like books, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, huge advocate for reading and books. Always, there's a book for everything, absolutely everything.
Yeah, there is. But it's not just about the literacy, is it, of the book? It's about the communication and language.
Yes.
And the building the vocabulary and the construction of sentences and the expression and the dialogue.
And the comprehension of that.
Absolutely.
Get to the end of the book. Ask them questions about, I don't know, if you've read The Colour Monster, can anybody remember what colour the monster was when he was scared? Like getting to the end, reflect back on what's been read, see if the children have listened, have they understood?
And can they articulate it?
Exactly, yeah. And then they will then begin to apply that in life during their play and interactions with other children.
Reflection's a hard thing to do, isn't it? Even as adults sometimes.
It is, yes. So, you don't want to all the time, do you?
But bringing in those early skills, it's vital, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
So physical development then, there's been, that's a huge part of children's, obviously it's a prime area of learning, and it's a huge part of what people are saying is school ready, on whether they can balance, whether they can sit and hop, and things like putting their own coats on. Do you see a problem with any of that? And where we're going with the EYFS and children's physical development?
Yeah, I think it's imperative that everybody understands that learning happens in a sequence.
Yeah.
Children don't just wake up one day and are suddenly able to sit up. They don't just wake up one day and are suddenly able to run. Children, right from birth, opportunities like providing tummy time, provide children with core strength, which then means they can sit up. They can then develop muscles which enable them to stand, cruise along furniture. Then they're able to walk independently. Muscles develop from the inside out. So they start at your core and they move right through to your fingers. So these muscles that we're talking about children needing to be able to mark make, not only do they need to develop muscles in their hands and fingers to hold writing utensils, form recognisable shapes, they also need core strength to maintain their posture to sit at a table. So it goes right back to basics, being a baby. And I think that's why early years education is so important from being young, so we can educate parents, families.
It starts from day
on these
one,
things.
doesn't
The first
it?
1,000 days of a child's life are the most important in terms of embedding fundamentals like that and engaging in those really high quality interactions. So in terms of physical development, we have our own writing program at Banana Moon. So that focuses on really embedding those fundamental skills, the core strength to maintain posture to sit at a table, how to hold pencils effectively. But it works on the basics. It works on developing the muscles, the dexterity in your hands, arms, fingers.
Yeah, and you're not going to move on from a grasp, are you, to a
No.
pincer grip
No.
if you've not got that muscle,
Exactly.
that muscle strength and ability to do that.
Absolutely.
And all those all those activities like threading and moving bricks and
clay, Play-Doh.
it builds up those
It does.
important muscles for children to be able to then use their fingers appropriately, doesn't it?
It does,
And
absolutely.
be able to zip up their coat,
Yeah, do
and
buttons.
and tie their shoelaces, and it all like you say, it sequences on, doesn't
It does.
from those basic fundamentals of physical development.
Yeah, it does, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Lauren, for that lovely discussion on school readiness, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.